Welcome to the second in a series of information sessions designed for state directors of adult education. The purpose of the series is to acquaint key staff in state adult education offices with the changes in the recently reauthorized Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, in order to facilitate transition to the new law. WIOA will require strong partnerships at the state level. A good working knowledge of the legislation is essential to being effective in that leadership role. This session employs a format known as a flipped classroom by delivering content in advance of planned discussions and interaction. This series and format is a result of conversations with the Executive Committee of the National Adult Education Professional Development Consortium. This session will focus on the purposes of the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, or AFLA, outline broad provisions of unified plans and the performance accountability system, discuss 3 new activities in AFLA, and outline several other changes to the Act. It will also review authorization levels through 2020 and provide information on how to offer comment about WIOA implementation and ask questions about the Act. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act reauthorizes the Workforce Investment Act, which was due for reauthorization in 2003. It represents the first major reform in the U.S. workforce system in over a decade. Among the overall purposes of the Act is the intent to increase access to opportunity for employment, education, training, and support services for individuals, particularly those with barriers to employment, and to the services they need to succeed in the labor market. It encourages new opportunities for collaboration across the federal and state agencies, strengthens partnerships, emphasizes accountability, and promotes connections to employers and to regional needs. The WIOA also supports and makes investments in innovation and promising models, something that is underscored throughout. Title II of WIOA reauthorizes and enhances the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act. 2 sections, the state plan and performance accountability, that are currently a part of Title II under WIA, have been moved to Title I-A, a section of the new law that is focused on system alignment. The provisions under these 2 sections apply to all 4 core programs in WIOA. This information session will touch briefly on the state plan and the performance requirements. Information sessions 3 and 4 will be devoted to a more thorough discussion of the provisions within these 2 areas. AFLA retains purposes that have been in place over 50 years of legislative history in adult education. They acknowledge the broad role adult education and literacy plays in helping adults improve employment, self-sufficiency, and in supporting the educational development of children. The importance of high school completion for adults continues to be of primary importance to achieving these broad purposes. AFLA recognizes that completion of high school is not an end in itself, but the means to further opportunity. It adds to the purpose of high school completion the transition to post-secondary education through the use of career pathways. A new purpose statement in AFLA formalizes a role that adult education has played for decades related to assisting immigrants and English language learners learn to read, write, and speak English, adding mathematics to the scope of services. It expands the focus of English language learning by adding civics-related purposes. States are required to prepare a single, coordinated, unified plan across the core programs, or a combined state plan that adds other specified federal programs, including the Carl Perkins Career and Technical Education Act. Unified plans must include a strategic vision and goals for preparing an educated and skilled workforce and for meeting the needs of employers. Strategic goals must be based on economic conditions, workforce needs, and available resources for workforce development. Operational elements to support the strategy include how the state plans to align and coordinate the core and other programs, engage community colleges and career and technical education schools, and improve access to a wide range of services. States are also required to submit title-specific elements, including for AFLA, how they intend to align adult education content standards with state-adopted content standards and assess the quality of adult education providers. States must submit unified plans in March of 2016. The Act establishes common performance measures that all core programs must use and requires the Secretaries of Education and Labor to consult with a variety of stakeholders to develop definitions for the indicators. This will ensure national comparability of data, one of the hallmarks of the current national reporting system. The indicators differ from the performance indicators in Title II of WIA, adding, among other things, a requirement to report on earnings and a measure for effectiveness in serving employers. The performance accountability provisions go into effect on July 1st, 2016. AFLA creates 3 new activities that are added to the definition of adult education and literacy services and become a part of required activities for local adult education programs under the Act. First, it creates integrated education and training services that provide adult education concurrently and contextually with occupational training. Congress issued a manager's report that accompanied the introduction of WIOA. The report stresses the delivery of adult education in conjunction with occupational skills training as a primary reform principle of AFLA reauthorization. Second, workforce preparation activities were added to the definition of adult education and literacy services. The definition supports teaching employability skills, services that help individuals gain basic academic critical thinking and digital literacy skills, as well as other competencies. The Act also creates a new integrated English literacy and civics education program. This replaces the English literacy and civics program, which was previously funded through annual appropriations. The inclusion of it in AFLA makes it an authorized program and eliminates the need for it to be funded annually through the appropriations process. The Act requires the Secretary of Education to reserve 12% of AFLA appropriated funds and distribute those funds to states using a formula provided for in the Act. The new program retains the focus on English language proficiency and civics education instruction and creates stronger ties to employment and the workforce system. The Act contains changes that affect how states will compete funds to local adult education agencies. The definition of eligible provider increases the importance of all eligible applicants having demonstrated effectiveness in providing adult education and literacy services. The list of eligible providers under WIA was a definitive list of providers who could apply for funds. WIOA contains provisions that make that list illustrative, allowing any organization of demonstrated effectiveness eligible to apply for funds. Other changes in WIOA affect how states may award funds. The 12 considerations under WIA used in the application process have been revised, adding an emphasis to alignment of local adult education programs to local workforce plans and one-stops, as well as coordination of support services. In addition to the considerations, the Act establishes 5 new application requirements a state must use, including those aimed at alignment with local workforce plans and participation in the one-stop system. Under Title IB, which includes local plans under Title I, AFLA applicants must first submit applications to local workforce boards to review for alignment with local plans. States have many of the same fiscal requirements under WIOA. The changes include an increased state minimum, which may be used for state administration. It also changes the cap on corrections education and other institutionalized individuals from 10% to 20%, allowing a state to increase its commitments to that program. WIOA makes significant changes to how states may use state leadership funds. In preceding versions of adult education legislation, states had broad discretion in how leadership funds were used to support activities of statewide significance in promoting the purposes of each act. WIOA, for the first time, requires states to spend leadership funds on mandated activities. After the state covers the mandated activities, it may expend funds on other permissible activities, including any activities of statewide significance. In addition to increasing the cap on national leadership funds to 2%, or up to $15 million, WIOA contains a provision similar to the state leadership provisions requiring the Secretary of Education to fund 4 new required activities with permissible activities thereafter. Included is the requirement to carry out an independent evaluation of the activities under AFLA at least once every 4 years. The Act authorizes an amount of funds that cannot be exceeded through the appropriations process in any fiscal year, beginning in 2015 through 2020, when the Act expires. In partnership with the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, which is responsible for WIOA Title IV amendments to the Rehabilitation Act, the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education is seeking input to help identify issues and concerns that we need to address in order to fulfill the expectations of WIOA, particularly as we develop draft regulations for public comment. Please visit the blog post and submit comments by August 29, 2014. The post includes 4 specific questions related to AFLA. We welcome your comments. The landing pages for partner programs remain available. Please forward questions to the appropriate mailboxes and access information resources listed. Thank you for joining this session. Please join us for our 3rd information session on Unified Plans under WIOA.